Alright, this is part 2 of Western Kansas Preppers video on getting the hell out of Dodge. And we're talking about national scenarios. So what do you do in a national scenario? And again, that's going to be dependent on your circumstances. You know, you have to think about what your plan is going to be based on what those circumstances are. And, you know, the other thing about this plan, you know, you have to integrate your supplies into this too. This national plan or regional plan about where you're going to go. So, to me, if you get an economic depression, I mean, you can try to tough it out where you're at, you know. I mean, that's a lot of people did that, for sure, in the Great Depression. And if you're a good enough prepper, you know, maybe you can last through the Depression. Hopefully you can. Maybe you got kids to support, though, things are going rough. That's why we got a lot of immigrants from Ireland, you know, back in the day, because they were having a famine. They couldn't support themselves. So they came here. And you may find, if the situation is to that degree, you may have to go elsewhere to provide for your family. I don't know. So obviously, what's going to dictate that, your choice, as far as getting the hell out of Dodge in an economic depression, is, you know, where are the jobs? Where are you going to be able to sustain yourself and your family? You know, so really, you don't need an atlas to tell you anything about that. That's not going to help you. This is not really about that. So if that's your problem, you just need to get transportation to wherever things are better and hope for the best, assuming that our depression hasn't caused some type of anarchy or something that's going to threaten your safety on the way. But, you know, we could come into a scenario where maybe there is totalitarian-style government, or, you know, another possibility is that we have a biohazard or nuclear-type event that triggers some type of response from government that is very problematic, and you want to get away from that. Well, if that's possible, then my plan would be to simply, if I'm from Dodge City, again, I think you want to try to avoid interstates in a scenario like that. So I'd be going up Highway 83 or back roads very close to it, or far enough out of sight until, and that's where that gazetteer would come in handy, because I'd have back roads lined up to go right down my highway. And eventually I think you want to highlight your route on your gazetteer should you just be able to use back roads. But if you can't, if you're able to use the highway, then I would take Highway 83 all the way up through Dakota. And eventually I've kind of thought about where I would go in Canada, you know, and you got most normal atlases in this country will have Canada in it. And north of Kansas, if you go straight north, you're going to wind up in Saskatchewan, or that area. Here's North Dakota right there. Won't focus, but that's North Dakota. There it is. And so I'll be trying to get up through the populated areas again, up into some of these areas where you got a lot of water, fresh water, you got game, livestock, you know, up through there. That looks like a good area to me to get out of here. Now, I don't know how many other people are going to have that idea, you know. That may be a really popular idea, depending on what the situation is. But if it's a national type problem, then that's, you know, that's to me a good solution. If it's a true SHTF deal, that's where we get into the next problem. Now, you know, my other choice, you know, coming from Kansas would be, would be to go, you know, much as say, well, that's a long way to go, you know, all the way up to Canada, especially, you know, through Canada. My other choice would be to go south, you know, to Mexico. Now, I mean, I don't know if you followed the news in Mexico lately, but I feel like they're already kind of having some SHTF down there. You know, so things would have to be awfully messed up in this country before I ever thought about going down there. You know, I'm not trying to offend anybody with that comment, but as far as safety and your safety and security go, I don't think there's any contest. I mean, things would have to get dramatically awful in this country before Mexico is an appealing alternative. that would be, like I say, your facts have to be awfully bad, and a more appealing alternative than going north to Canada. It's very hard for me to think of a scenario where I would not, maybe, like I say, if Canada were also, heavily nuked or something, and there was no other place to go except south, then that would be my choice. But like I say, hard to imagine. I'd almost rather get on a ship or something and go, overseas or something. I don't know. That's a real hard choice if that was a scenario. Brings me to the next topic here, global scenario. Now, what do I mean by global? I mean, this is something that's affected the whole world. So, there's really nowhere to go that's going to be a whole lot better. In other words, Canada's going through SHTF. Mexico, it's a global pandemic. It's a it's a biological hazard situation where it's spreading all over the place, or it's a massive nuclear war. There's only a few isolated places you can go. Those kind of things. I think you're just going to have to pick your spots here and find a good hole-up spot. And for me, again, I'd be targeting the mountains of Colorado or Wyoming, that area from Kansas. Assuming I couldn't just bug in. That may be the better choice. It just depends. I feel like I got a good community here that would be supportive and would be good to survive on. But if I felt like for some reason that wasn't going to work, then I think that's where you go. Presuming there's nothing wrong over there. Well, I mean, it'd be wrong everywhere, but presuming that will be the best place to go get isolated and away from people where you can still provide for yourself. And in a global situation, that's where my discussion about going up to that area in Canada might not work, because supplies are limited. Canada's got a harsh winter, People up there live in a harsh winter with the assistance of energy. And if energy is not in good supply, and then people may be dying up there of cold, freezing. It may be much harder winter than even they're used to. And if that's true, Canada may not be a good choice. It may be better to be in the Sun Belt down here, where you don't have to worry about providing for yourself as far as winter fuel goes. So, the last situation I mentioned, is not really specific. It's just unknown. And of course, this is a situation where, you don't, things are messed up, but you don't know where they're messed up or why. Maybe you don't know the extent of a nuclear disaster. You don't know the extent of biological infection or the way it's spreading. It's a very real possibility. You may not know where to go. Your bug out plan B, you may need to form another plan B as soon as you're heading toward plan B. You may need plan B1, B2, B3, or B. You may need plan C after you get to plan B. You may need to continuously be preparing for that next that next location on your way to the first location. So, those are just some of my thoughts here. Again, I encourage you to take your gazetteer and to actually go through and to highlight, some of those. Know yourself. Know which back roads will get you. Travel those back roads. See which ones will get you up through where you want to go without being on a major highway. I mean, if the military or somebody has blocked highways because of quarantine or whatever, and you feel like your family and your safety is at risk and you've got to go, not advocating anybody to dispute the government or anything, but if the right scenario happens and highways are blocked, or they may be blocked for other reasons, they may be blocked because of damage, they may be blocked because of snow, they may be blocked because of raiders on the highway. They may be blocked because of barricades during a conflict. I don't know. But know those back roads. If you're, Western Kansas is not a good place for a water escape. But if you're in the right place in the country, you may be able to have an alternate route through the water too. That maybe work better for you. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts of mine. Again, on SHTF routes, I would encourage you to put some thought into this yourself. Tell me what you think of how I broke this down into those different possibilities. I think you ought to have plans for each one of those scopes of threats. And tell me if you do have plans for those scopes of threats, or if you've thought about your plan B, C, etc. So this is Western Kansas Prepper. Thank you for watching, and I'm signing off.